2009, Michael Bay got his hands on Friday the 13th, as producer, of course. On directing duty is Marcus Nispel, someone whose other work I've never really been that fond of either. But yeah, I've never really held the original Friday the 13th film up in a particularly high regard. You know, I don't put it along the same lines as Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween, particularly Halloween, that I believe has a genuine cinematic artistry to it. You know, it's not just a great horror film, it's a great film. For me, the original Friday the 13th kind of felt like a cheap cash-in of the success of Halloween. You know, I get why it has fans. You go there for the bloodlust, for the kills, that kind of thing. But let's not pretend it's anything more than that. And I have no wish to offend Friday the 13th fans out there. But it's just, for me, when we got a remake of it, I wasn't one of those people who's like, oh, you can't touch Friday the 13th. That's abominable. You can't do that. To me, this was a film that, quite frankly, was ripe for the remaking. If you could take the story, do essentially the same thing with it, really, but update it, make it much better shot, you know, much more cinematic, a bit more brutal, a bit more realistic, then I'd be happy with that. So, did we get that, is the question. And I think, actually, you know what? We kind of did. But not only that, we got a central character, this character played by Jared Padalecki, who I know from Supernatural, as I'm sure most people would when they first came to this film, who I can actually get on board with. I can follow. He's got a purpose, you know, going back, looking for his sister. It gives me a reason to root for someone, to follow this main character, which I never really had all that much in the early Friday the 13th movies. Maybe not until we got the character of Tommy introduced. Most of the characters we had in the central roles were literally just cannon fodder, or Jason fodder in the case of Friday the 13th. But yeah, so I like that they have tried to give us a reason to go on this journey with this guy. Now, of course, we do get all the usual suspects here. We get the douchebag friend. We get the one who's just, you know, a bit of a joker, just wants to do drugs. You get the sexy slut who's just going to have sex with the first guy in sight. And then you get the girl who's pretty, kind of girl next door type, who doesn't just want to have sex, but actually seems to have something of a good head on their shoulders, a sense of morality about them. So, yeah. It's what we'd expect from a Friday the 13th film. And you know what? I think the cast in general does a pretty good job of filling those roles. Now, I will say that at times the dialogue feels completely unnatural. There are times where it kind of feels like they're trying to go for down with the kids type dialogue. You know, this is what mates would say to each other when they're together. And sometimes it just doesn't work. It feels like somebody is scripting it, which is obviously, of course, what has happened. It has been scripted. But there are scenes when that does work, you know, when the relationship between the friends kind of works. Now, as usually we get the token black guy, yet another one of the tropes when it comes to characters, and it does bug me a little bit that he always has to make references to the fact that, oh, is it because I'm black? You know, this, that and the other. There's a thing there where he talks about music and this woman assumes it's rap and he gets a big thing about it and then it turns out it is rap. And it's just like, you know, whatever, we get it. The whole race card thing was really done to death throughout the early noughties and the late 90s with Scream and beyond. It's just like, you know, I'd just like to have a black man or a black woman in a film just being a person. You know, it doesn't have to revolve around their race. That was a little bit of a bugbear, but hey-ho, whatever. As for Jason himself, Derek Mears, I feel, does quite a good job, you know. I mean, it's not rocket science with a role like this. It's not like you're going out there doing Shakespeare. You've got to have a physical presence, and I feel like Derek Mears does. Now, I liked Kane Hodder because everyone bangs on about how Kane Hodder was the best Jason, and I see that. I know why. I like what he did, but sometimes it felt like his movements were all about showboating. You turn the head and then the shoulders, and it's almost like a Terminator. And actually, what I like about what Derek Mears does is he's just a freight train. That's the best way to describe him. He's a freight train. He sees what he's going for and he rushes headlong for it. And I kind of like that. It really gets the tension going, So it's not the kind of walk like a zombie really slowly yet for some reason still catches up to you kind of Jason that we get with Kane Hodder. It's the I'm coming after you as fast as possible, you better damn run kind of Jason. And to me, that makes more sense. It's scarier and it gets the adrenaline pumping a lot faster. Now, the opening sequence in which we first see Jason's mum, it's essentially the first Friday the 13th film condensed into like a 5-minute sequence. And let's face it, we don't really want to rehash of the mother story. Jason's the star of the show. We want to get to him. So I'm happy enough that they get to him pretty early on. And then after that, we get a prolonged sequence with these people around a camp. They've gone out camping. Some of them are looking for drugs. And yeah, Jason attacks them. And it's brutal. Really, really brutal. Now, in the past, we've had Jason do his kills, and a lot of them have been quite humorous. And we do get some of that here, but not to a great extent. They're definitely going for the fear factor here. And like I say, in this opening sequence, when Jason's going around tearing the place up, I actually feel dread, which is what I feel like I should feel in this situation. And when he ties this woman up above the campfire in the sleeping bag, yeah, it's horrendous. It really gets me white knuckle syndrome going. So I like that sequence. It's very tense. Does what I think this kind of film should do, and it does it quite well. There are some questions that need to be raised, though. This isn't zombie Jason, as I've pointed out, or at least it doesn't appear to be. They seem to be going for just a very tough, very powerful man. So it does beg the question as to how he learnt electronics and how he was able to build underground lairs with lights all around, and it feels very... yeah, skilled Jason, I don't completely discount it, because I think given his situation, given the fact that I think he probably would have spent most of his time with his mum, I'm guessing his mum maybe could have taught him that. I mean, that's a stretch. It is, granted, it's a stretch, but there's no reason to assume that she might not have been able to teach him that stuff, or even have built it herself. That could have been built long before. It could have already been there, and Jason just was shown how to keep it going. So minor quibbles like that, but they don't really bring the film down at all for me, because it's just, if you want to go into it really deep, then okay, you can make a case against it. But for me, it's not too much of a problem. The film does do some things as well that are unexpected, like Danielle Panabaker's character. I honestly did not expect her to get killed. She's the, as I say, the typical more moral kind of girl. She doesn't just jump into bed with a guy as at first sight, and she cares. She cares about this Padalecki character. She cares about helping him find his sister, and so yeah. Given the way that these kind of movies tend to go, I honestly expected her to get out alive. So when she gets a machete straight through her, it was quite a shock. I was like, oh, right, they went there. And again, because of the way it's shot, very brutal, it has impact. There's a lot of nudity in this film, perhaps more than is necessary. I mean, I'm not sure it's ever really necessary, but they definitely pluck out those elements of the originals that people went in cinemas in droves to go and see, and they really amp it up a bit. More violence, more sex, all that kind of thing. So yeah, like I say, some of it for me, a little bit unnecessary, touches a nerve. It's also a bit strange seeing Travis Van Winkle playing a guy called Trent, who takes these kids, I say kids, they're clearly in their early 20s, to his summer house, because he played a very similar character called Trent in Transformers, which was produced by Michael Bay. So are they mixing worlds here? Is this like a Marvel kind of thing, shared universe? I don't know, but yeah, just a bit of a nod, bit of a wink, I think. Bit of a practical joke on Michael Bay's part, but hey ho, it's pretty humorous to imagine that those two worlds exist alongside each other, or in the same universe, I should say. Yeah, that character of Trent, I gotta say, he's written in such a way that he is just grade A douchebag. I think Van Winkle, which is an unfortunate name, he does a good job. You know, he does a good job of being the douchebag. He plays it well, and you know, that's what the character is meant to be. So, you can't really say more than that. This isn't a classic movie. I mean, what movie is going to be when it's produced by Michael Bay? Sorry, couldn't help but have a dig. But it is good. And it is, I would say, one of the better Friday the 13th movies. And I know there'll be a lot of people who are probably hovering over that unsub button right now because I've said that. But I just have to be honest. You know, the originals, they were never really known for their artistry. And I believe that this film does have a little bit. Not a lot, don't get me wrong. It ain't Citizen Kane, but it does what it does with great efficiency, and it's very effective at it. So yeah, I give it a 3.5 out of 5, and it's definitely one of my favourites in the franchise. What about you? How do you feel this film sits in with the rest of the franchise? Is it one of the better ones, or do you not rate it at all? Comment below, let me know, and until next time, crack it.